give a warm welcome to Sam Lambert, co-founder of Zenate, Victor Lem, head of marketing, Martin Runninger, country co-director of Proveg International and co-director of Vabel International, and Lauren May, researcher at the Future Food Institute. Victor, Sam, Martin, you could briefly present yourself and your work around transparency.
Hi everyone, good to see a big crowd listening in today. So my name's Sam, one of the co-founders of Zenate Global, where we're building the Palmyra ecosystem. One of our flagship products is called Palmyra Pro. It's a data management, traceability and compliance platform where we're working with primary producers and farming cooperatives on the ground with active projects currently across Latin America as well as Africa. Our key mission and our goal is to provide more trust, resilience and transparency into our supply chain. So some of the work that we do today is primarily focused on EU Deforestation Regulation impacted commodities, as well as work around improving adulteration and authenticity. So some of the stuff that Lauren talked about earlier in markets like honey and olive oil as well. So really excited to be here. I might hand over to Victor next.
I'm Victor Hugo, based on Lisbon. I'm head of marketing at Zenate Global. I manage the marketing efforts at the Palmyra ecosystem. So my main objective is translating the difficult and complex, sometimes often complex world of supply chain traceability into easy and accessible information for everyday consumers.
What's the biggest challenge you face today in capturing and verifying data?
If we're thinking about being able to present information and data to the consumers, we do ultimately have to start with the collection and the verification of the data at the very beginning of the supply chain. So in some of the work that we've been doing across Africa over the last 12 months or so, we've run into probably two big challenges. The first is around internet connectivity. So many of the areas that we work with farmers and co-ops in terms of sourcing and tracking of critical data events, they don't actually have internet access. So this has forced us to build an offline first approach, which allows the field agents that work for these cooperatives to go out into the field, collect farmer profiles, demographic data, farm mapping, and any of the critical data events that you would want to capture, whether that's payments to the farmers, processing records, or harvesting records. So that's been probably the biggest challenge we initially ran into, and we probably went in thinking that that wouldn't be as big of an issue, but still very much is. And then the second issue around data verification is, okay, fine, you can collect the data to start with, but how do you actually increase the assurance of the data that you're capturing in the first place? And there's several different methodologies that we've rolled out and tested, starting with using verifiable credentials, which is backed on chain, but linking that to facial and biometric authentication checks. So really just making sure that the agent that's actually submitting the data is actually who they say they are. So these uses very simple AI models to check. Many different companies do this today. The second thing that we've done was around GPS coordinates and making sure that when data gets submitted, it's been submitted from the right location. So as you may have noticed from the image, I'm based in Japan, and obviously if we see data getting submitted from Japan when it should be submitted from Nigeria, that should raise some red flags. So we do have a system that checks that. And then the last bit is quite simple, and it's mainly human process driven, which is just having an approval system in place. Data coming in needs to get approved, and for us, since we store the data on chain, this data lives publicly forever. So having a system right before it actually lands on chain has been a sort of big thing for us, and once it's there, it's publicly available, it's immutable, and people can access it whenever they want.
From a market perspective, it's not about adding more data to the end consumer, because Palmyra Pro, Palmyra and the solutions of Palmyra already has thousands and thousands of data points. So for marketing, the biggest challenge is condensing that data into something that is going to be accessible for the end consumer. And we find the similar findings that Lauren found in the Insights Consumer program, which is basically creating a lot of videos showing the people on the ground, actually creating the bridge between the consumer and the producers. So this is very important for us, showing the people behind it, showing videos and showing photos, just to complement on the marketing perspective.
How do you think technology will help us capture this data in the future?
Our point of view is a very healthy and a resilient supply chain ultimately flows the value through to the right people, whether that's the farmers or the farming cooperatives or ultimately the end consumer as well. So when we think about how do you want to make these systems more resilient or verifiable or transparent and effectively just add value to the ecosystem, there's probably three core technologies that we're primarily focused on. So we're a bit biased in the approach that we're taking, and in no particular order, it's blockchain, it's IoTs, and it's AI. And we're already quite proactively deployed blockchain-based solutions, and I'll just touch very quickly on why we're doing that. First bit's around the immutability of the data, so making it publicly available I think really does add value. Means other people can access it, and it's not a closed system where you need complex APIs to transfer data, so I think that's really important. But the other thing as well, why we've already started doing this, is we're putting payment records on chain in a public way. And this has a long-term benefit by giving financial identity to the farmers. These are people that currently can't access credit, they can't access financial products in an easy way. And sure, the data today might not be valuable, but in 5 years it will be. And there's a historical track record of farmers getting paid, tracking processing records, which makes it significantly easier for service providers like banks and insurers to assess risk. The second thing, which we've already seen in a lot of manufacturing processes, very much in the European markets, is the use of IoT devices. Right now, especially in the work that we're doing, it's still very much reliant on human inputs. But I do think IoTs will become cheap over time, and there'll be more of a reliance on capturing granular data that way. So that's the second thing. And then the final piece around AI, we're thinking AI more from how do we use the data that's in our system that the companies manage or the traceability platforms like us manage. And in the long run, I do really believe that's where the value will come from. And we're talking about millions of different critical data events that have been captured. And what you can do with that, I think, really excites us. So from a financing point of view, we can assess risk better. Insurers can do the same thing. But even just within the supply chain, optimizing yield ultimately means that at the very start, farmers benefit, more value flows back to them, to their communities, which really excites us, and it keeps the prices more manageable for the consumers. They get better height, they get better quality products, there's more trust in the system. So those are sort of the three sort of core technologies I think that can drive significant value into these ecosystems.
Sustainability and transparency sometimes feels like a buzzword, it's a broad statement. So I think the Green Claims Direct is actually something positive for not only for the European Union, but possibly as an example to other countries like US and Latin America. So I see that as a positive, to be honest. And because working at Zenate to have blockchain anchored capabilities, every sustainability claim is going to be verifiable with proof. So that's going to be, consumers nowadays, they demand radical transparency. And that, for me, is a positive step.
Will it change the type of data that you will have that buyers will ask from producers?
Possibly, I don't see change, but I see new perspectives to show the same data in novel ways, if I would say so. Yeah, a marketing perspective, yeah.
And I'm wondering, are there other compliance regulations that are affecting your job at the moment?
Yeah, there's a number of different compliance challenges coming through right now. I think the big one that maybe some of you guys in the audience have heard of is the EU Deforestation Regulation, and it's just undergone a potential delay. I think this is the second time it's happened. But we're very much focused on that, and we've built our capabilities around it. I think the main thing maybe just to touch on, which is a question you asked earlier, is how does it impact your work? from a technology point of view, if you're building these systems out in a scalable and flexible way, compliance really doesn't have to be a headache, especially if you're capturing much of this data, as Martin sort of mentioned earlier as well. So, using technology, I think you can turn compliance into a competitive edge, and use it in a way to build even more trust with the end consumer, or with the policymakers as well. So there's lots of different compliance challenges coming up. I know the US has some around FDA, traceability codes. EU has a bunch always coming through, whether that's in agri-food products or batteries, digital passports. So the good thing is, if you have a system that allows you to capture that to start with, you can be very much prepared for what's coming and evolve and adapt with that in a competitive way.
It's about the meaty words, the meaty terms. So just recently, and I think we heard about this also in other session yesterday, but the European Union approved new rules on how plant-based products can be labeled, and especially around using words like sausages or burger. And the stated goal is to make things clearer for consumers and improve transparency.
Yeah, I think on our side, we talk about this internally quite a lot. I think in the next 5 years, I'd love to see the certifiers moving away from just saying this is certified, but being backed by real-time verifiable data, and moving towards that direction is something I'd like to see, and I'm already excited that it is moving in that direction. So that's my 5-year sort of outlook, at least.
Yeah, transparency only works when people understand it. So I would like to see in the next 5 years more storytelling behind the product journey, more audiovisual, like more media, no static pages, not a lot of QR codes, but things that connect, create a bridge between the producers, show their faces, show their stories, and connect with the end consumers. I would like to see more storytelling, definitely.
I'm completely agreeing what you all told us concerning consumer, but for me, I'm on the other side, meaning I work for the B2B, for the producers. We develop a platform for winemakers, starting from the plant, ending at the bottle of wine, so really complete transparency and also complete traceability from A to Z. And now we are really into the go-to-market, so my job now is to convince the producer of the value of all this data and to share the passion, meaning the story of their craftsmanship, but together with my data. And I found it very, very difficult to really get that story true to my producers. So my question is here, we're all telling the beautiful story of having the consumers in it, but it all starts with the producers. So how can we change their mindset that they have to put in the data before we can end to the point that we're all discussing?
Try to keep it quick. I think of the traceability use cases being twofold. First is more like high volume production types of businesses. I think it suits really well from a compliance point of view and just a general transparency point of view. And then the other side is around premium products, which I think you just mentioned as well. And on our side, at least, the storytelling aspect has been really important for us. Victor has a background in filmmaking and videography, and that's been our approach in terms of being able to share that message across as well. And what we've actually found is, especially at the artisanal level, we did some stuff in tea in Sri Lanka. They cared significantly less about just the capturing of the data, but more about the sharing of their stories and the faces of the farmers that are plucking the tea and sort of making the tea with their hands. So, to touch on your point, I think, very two different use cases, but on the artisanal and premium side, I do agree with you that very much starts with the producer's origin, the producer's story, and having a unique way to communicate that is differentiated from other winemakers in your instance.